For most of human history, if you didn't know what was in a place, the correct move was to assume it was full of monsters. Not because anyone had actually seen a monster there, just because not knowing felt worse than guessing something horrifying. We're going to watch humanity's relationship with the unknown evolve from literally drawing dragons on maps, to sailing off the edge of what we thought was a flat world, to eventually photographing the entire planet from orbit and still somehow arguing about whether it's round. Subscribe now, because our track record with uncertainty is genuinely unhinged. The earliest maps weren't really about geography. They were about power and religion, with geography as an afterthought. Babylonian world maps placed their own city at the exact center of reality, surrounded by a ring of ocean, beyond which was just labeled as regions no one could reach. Not explored, not empty. Just unreachable, as if the mapmaker had given up and written a permanent do not disturb sign around the edge of the known world. Medieval European maps took this even further with something called TO maps, which arranged the known continents in a tidy religious diagram with Jerusalem placed dead center. Because if you're going to be wrong about geography, you might as well be wrong in a theologically satisfying way. Actual coastlines, distances, and directions were secondary. The map's job wasn't to help you travel. It was to show you your place in a divinely ordered universe, and if that happened to also get you lost, that was apparently an acceptable trade-off. The phrase, "Here be dragons," gets thrown around as if medieval maps were covered in it. In reality, it appears on almost no surviving maps. There is exactly one confirmed instance, on a small globe from the early 1500s, marking parts of Asia. What maps actually did instead was arguably weirder. Cartographers filled unknown regions with elaborate illustrations of sea serpents, cyclops, people with faces in their chests, and other imaginative nightmares, based on second-hand travelers' tales, religious symbolism, and what can only be described as vibes. These weren't jokes or decorations. They were presented as legitimate geographic information. If a sailor told a wild story about a monster, and nobody could immediately prove otherwise, that monster got a permanent spot on the map, sometimes for centuries, until someone finally sailed there and had to awkwardly explain that no, actually, it's just some more ocean. This is, essentially, the birth of a very human habit. Confidently filling in gaps in your knowledge with something dramatic, rather than simply admitting you don't know yet. Once European powers started actually sailing toward the blank spaces on their maps, the results were a mixed bag. There were, in fact, no Cyclops. There were also, unfortunately, entire continents full of people who already lived there, whom explorers frequently treated with roughly the same disregard as if they actually had been mythical monsters, which is its own much darker episode of history we're not fully getting into today. What exploration did reveal was how badly the old maps had exaggerated, misjudged, or simply invented entire land masses out of rumor. Terra Australis, a massive hypothetical southern continent, was included on maps for centuries based on almost no evidence, purely because European geographers assumed the planet needed a big landmass down there to balance out the northern continents. Like the Earth was a piece of furniture that needed its weight distributed evenly. When explorers finally mapped the actual southern hemisphere, most of that imagined continent turned out to be ocean, with a real, much smaller Antarctica, eventually confirmed centuries later, buried under ice. Nobody had guessed correctly either. Meanwhile, cartographers like Mercator solved the problem of putting a round planet onto a flat map by inventing a projection that was brilliant for sailors and catastrophically misleading for everyone else, distorting the size of countries near the poles so severely that Greenland still looks roughly the size of Africa on classroom maps today, despite Africa actually being about 14 times larger. We fixed our fear of blank spaces and immediately introduced a completely different, mathematically confident kind of wrong. By the 20th century, humans had satellites, actual machines in orbit, photographing the entire surface of the Earth, with a precision that would have made a medieval cartographer weep with joy, or possibly just weep out of confusion. GPS satellites now let you find your exact location on the planet within a few meters, using a network of orbiting clocks so precise they have to account for the effects of relativity, or the whole system drifts out of accuracy within days. We went from writing, "Here be dragons," because we genuinely didn't know, to correcting for the bending of spacetime because we know so precisely that even tiny errors matter. And yet, despite having photographed literally the entire visible surface of the planet from space, a small but extremely online segment of humanity looked at all of that evidence and decided the correct conclusion was that the Earth is flat. Centuries of cartographers slowly, painfully eliminating monsters and mystery from the map, and here we are again, filling a gap that doesn't even exist with something dramatic, purely because it's more interesting than accepting the boring, well-documented truth. Here's what nobody expects. We've actually mapped more of the surface of Mars in high resolution than we have the floor of our own oceans. There are entire mountain ranges and canyon systems on the sea floor that remain less understood than the surface of another planet. We didn't run out of unknown places. We just moved on to easier unknowns and left the hard, cold, expensive ones sitting right beneath our boats. So here now. We started by drawing monsters in the places we hadn't been, because uncertainty felt worse than fiction. We slowly replaced those monsters with actual coastlines, actual continents, and actual math, one very expensive and often fatal voyage at a time. We built machines that photograph the entire planet from orbit and correct for the curvature of space-time itself. And somehow, the impulse to fill a gap in knowledge with something more dramatic than the truth never actually went away. It just moved from the edges of old maps to the comment section of literally every video showing the Earth from space. We didn't get rid of the dragons. We just relocated them. If you enjoyed watching humanity slowly map its way out of superstition and directly into a new kind of confident nonsense, subscribe. We've got a lot more unknown left to explore.